to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Well, friends, here at 180 Markets, we love healthcare. And that is because not only can we make money as investors, but we are in the golden age. And specifically in cancer, when we look at the last 10, circa 15 years, the breakthrough treatments have been incredible. But what's even more exciting is what's yet to come. And that's why I'm thrilled today to be joined by Chris Burns of Amplia Therapeutics, because Amplia is breaking through in cancer, making these treatments potentially available that really can change our lives over the next 10 years and beyond. And with that introduction, Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Lovely to be here.
Right. Hey, Chris, you are at an exciting time in a biotech's journey, if you will. You're on phase 2A trials of your Accent trial, I believe. Can you just talk to us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Accent trial is a trial we've been running now for a couple of years. It's a trial of our experimental drug namafotinib, a drug that was discovered here in Australia. And we're testing that drug in combination with chemotherapy in advanced pancreatic cancer patients. So these are patients that have presented to doctors otherwise feeling quite well, but have unfortunately been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer that's spread to other parts of the body. Our drug is designed to break down some aspects of the of that tumor tissue and make the chemotherapy work better. And so we've been testing the drug in patients now for over 18 months, actually, and getting some good data.
Great. And we are at the pointy end of the trial because I
Mm.
believe that the recruitment process is done and we will have some results in calendar 2025. Can you just talk to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long journey to get to this point, but we've now fully recruited the phase 2A aspect of the trial. So that's now 50 patients who have been recruited. They're all taking the same dose of drug. They take that drug, as I said, in combination with the standard of care chemotherapy. And we announced full recruitment of the trial earlier this year, so in January, and that is indeed 2 months ahead of schedule. So very pleased to get that recruited so quickly, and I think that reflects the enthusiasm that we're seeing from clinicians at the clinical trial sites. So with that recruitment, we're expecting to have some top-line data by early Q3 this year. So what I mean by that is some data that's really statistically robust data. We've been working with our bioinformaticians and statisticians to make sure that that data set is actually appropriate to see some real trends. We compare our data with historical data. And so we'll have top-line data early Q3 and then much more mature data by the end of this calendar year.
Right. Hey, Chris, I want to dive a little bit deeper for a second. Amplia, you work through what they call an FAK inhibitor,
Mhm.
which sounds a little bit fancy, if you will, but can you just explain it to the audience? How
Sure.
I believe it's a protein, is that right?
Yeah. So FAK is a protein that's overexpressed in pancreatic cancer. It contributes to the disease progression. But FAK is also expressed in the tissues around the cancer, and that is problematic in terms of pancreatic cancer and other cancers as well, because you get a scar tissue that forms, so that you get this very dense, fibrous, what they call desmoplastic tissue that basically protects the cancer from attack by the immune system and by attack from drugs that you might give patients with pancreatic cancer to address the cancer. So by developing a drug that we have that inhibits this particular protein, it binds to this protein and stops it working. So we have a way of stopping its activity in the tumor cell that's actually helping the tumor grow. And we have a way of stopping the activity of the protein that's present in this microenvironment in the tissue around the cancer that forms this dense scar tissue. So by doing that, our drug actually makes it easier for chemotherapies or other targeted agents in the Accent trial, it's chemotherapy, to actually penetrate into the tumor and do its job and kill the cancer cells.
Right.
I also want to make one other point that our drug is a drug that's given as a pill. So it's very convenient for patients to take. So they take the drug and by mouth. It's so far to date, it's been well tolerated by patients. We don't see a lot of tolerability issues. And then the patients can then get their normal chemotherapy as they would, under other treatments, under standard treatment regime.
Right. And Chris, so a lot of these readouts, obviously you're testing for pancreatic cancer, but for other solid tumor types of cancers, potentially, they would be potential candidates as well. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So our initial focus has been pancreatic cancer. There's a lot of science to support the utility of FAK inhibitors in pancreatic cancer, and we've got good preclinical data from our studies and with collaborators at the Garvan Institute in Sydney.
Got
But there are other solid tumors that also have this scar tissue around them that contribute to the challenge of treating those tumors. So one is ovarian cancer. We're very interested in doing work in ovarian cancer, and we're talking to a number of funding bodies and clinician scientists about the opportunities there. That's something that's not funded at the moment, but that's another opportunity. Diseases like head and neck cancer, which is really poorly treated, bile duct cancer, certain lung cancers, all have this contribution of FAK to the tumor growth and its resistance and difficulty to treat by standard methods. So we think that there's a big opportunity. Yes, our primary focus has been today in pancreatic cancer, but we see a much broader potential.
Right. Well, speaking of big opportunity, I don't believe you're the only one because I'm looking at other companies out there and doing some preparation work that are looking at this space. GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, Inexmed, they're all looking at FAK inhibitors as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have in the past. Inksmed is a Chinese company in a very similar space to us. There's another company, Veristem, a US company. So there's really only three other companies now that are actively pursuing FAK inhibitors. And that's because Pfizer, GSK were in that space early on, absolutely. They saw the same potential benefits of FAK inhibition for treatment of solid tumors, but unfortunately, the assets they took in, if I'm blunt, they probably rushed them into the clinic. First generation compounds. Our compounds are second generation inhibitor. It's much more selective, has a very good half-life. It's a drug you take once a day by mouth as a pill, as I said. And we believe that it's significantly better than the earlier drugs that went into the clinic. So we call our drug the best-in-class FAK inhibitor.
Yeah, and I suppose that in a way, the learnings that you get, unfortunately, from their mistakes help you going forward, but also they help us as a society because, as you said, pancreatic cancer, a large total addressable market in itself, but also all solid tumors potentially out there. Chris, I want to talk a little bit. Trials, they obviously cost money. Getting these drugs to market is not an easy endeavor at all. Just how is the balance sheet shaped up for for the upcoming trials?
Yeah, so we were very fortunate. We were able to raise 13 million at the end of last year. So we've just recently put out our 4C. So we've got a little over 13 million in the bank at the moment. That will allow us to carry on the Accent trial to the end of this year. As I said, we'll have mature data by the end of this year. We're also planning to run a trial in the US, also in pancreatic cancer, but with a slightly different backbone of chemotherapy than what we're currently looking at. And that's because that's the standard chemotherapy in Australia that we're looking at here. It's a different chemotherapy backbone in the US that we'll be adding on top of. So we have funding to initiate that trial in the US and do a first stage of that clinical trial there as well, which takes us through to the end of this year.
Great. Hey, Chris, it's incredible that it's not only then just the Amplia product in itself, it's also obviously the way it's combined with other chemotherapies and other, I suppose, maybe immunotherapies. Having to try to maximize the different relationships between them, how do you manage that?
So we're very fortunate in the drug that we're developing, namafatinib, was discovered, as I mentioned, here in Australia by a really talented team of drug discoverers at the Cancer Therapeutics Cooperative Research Centre, which was based in Melbourne, worked with the top medical research institutes around the country. And the drug was designed in such a way that it actually wouldn't impact other drugs that a patient might be taking. That is always an issue, what they call drug-drug interactions. And our compound actually is very clean in that regard. So we don't see any risk. We've not observed that to date. We don't predict any based on the properties of the molecule and the behavior of the molecule. So you can take our drug without it impacting other drugs. And I think that's really important to note.
Yes. Hey, Chris, we are super excited to be joined with you on this journey for Amplia. If there was one takeaway or two takeaways you want every investor or prospective investor to know about Amplia, what would they be?
Yeah, well, I think as you've touched on the ACCENT trial in pancreatic cancer, you've recruited that ahead of schedule. We've got preliminary data that's really very promising. It's not statistically robust. That's why we need a few more patients on it, but the trend is really very promising. So I think that's the first opportunity. And the first thing I'd like to stress. I think the other point which we've touched on today and is critical. We're currently looking at pancreatic cancer, but we see opportunities outside of pancreatic cancer, and we see opportunities, and we've got data to support it, in combination with other therapies as well. So as the therapeutic landscape changes, we see a FAK inhibitor as being something that will combine with new treatment modalities, as well as the existing chemotherapies that we're currently looking at.
Great. Hey, Chris, thank you so much. We're definitely looking forward towards the back half of this year here to see the results of these ACCENT trials and definitely stay in touch.
Thank you very much, Greg. All the best.
Bye-bye.